Hello YouTube, I'm Joe Lee. Welcome to the Life of Joe. Today I present to you my 2013 Porsche Panamera GTS. I've had this Panamera GTS for a little over 2 years now. Wanted to share my perspective on the car and how it compares to other cars that I've owned. So that being said, I'll share the details of this GTS. The Panamera GTS sits between the base and the turbo model. This is a gap filler and it's the highest performance naturally aspirated Panamera of this generation, and it also is the sportiest, as we'll get to in a little bit. So I wanted to share some details of what makes the GTS different and special. The Panamera GTS sets itself apart from the other Panameras with a sport design bumper. As you can see, it is more aggressive with a matte black center insert that makes it look a lot sportier. Personally, this is the only way I would have a Panamera. The GTS also gets the same brakes as the turbo, as you can see how nicely it fills in the wheels over there. And it has the 3-piece spoiler that's on the turbo. The standard Panamera has a single piece that is a lot narrower. In the back, you can see the black exhaust tips. The GTS has a unique exhaust that is more aggressive than the base Panamera, and definitely sounds better than the turbo as well, since the turbo has a little bit muffled sound because of the turbos themselves. The GTS comes standard with a lot of options that are offered on the 4S. This particular one has the adaptive anti-roll bars, or PDCC as Porsche calls it. Additionally, there's Sport Chrono with launch control. So moving on to the inside, this particular car has the multifunction steering wheel, which is controversial, but personally I love having the ability to manually shift using one hand, where I could go upshift by pushing the buttons and downshift by pulling them. I have another car with paddles on it and I prefer having these buttons. So other GTS unique features include the embroidered headrest. As you can see, it says GTS on them. And I think I mentioned the Alcantara interior, which is unique to the GTS. It could be optioned with full leather, with leather seating as well. But personally, I like the Alcantara. What you give up is the cold seat function. So this GTS does family duty. I have car seats in the back, and it accommodates the family very well. All right, let's take a look at the engine bay. So here is the 4.8 liter naturally aspirated V8. So the GTS has 430 horsepower and 384 foot-pounds of torque. Peak horsepower comes in at 5,600 RPM. So this is a sporty V8. This isn't a grunty V8 that dies out the top. Instead, it keeps building until redline. This has 30 more horsepower than the standard S and 4S, thanks to more aggressive camshafts and an intake system from the turbo, which has 2 sets of air filters instead of one that's on the base S, that is. I love that you can see the intake manifold, just how exposed the engine is. It's a rare sight compared to cars nowadays that have everything covered up. One feature I loved about the Panamera is the hatch. The hatch is a requirement for me. I have kids. I like to put their bikes in the vehicle, and I was opting for an SUV at first, or at least I was shopping for one, but I just prefer a lower ride height. And this car, once I looked into how big it is, really scratched that itch. A close-up of the cargo space here. Compared to other sedans I've had, the hatch just allows me to transport taller items, which has been very convenient. The styling of the Panamera is probably the most controversial aspect of it. Personally, I love it. I think this looks like a 928 in a way, a stretched out version of it. And I just think it really just looks different than anything else. This particular one is a first gen. The second gen has a crease in the back to include the hatch that makes it a little more angular, a little less like a hatch. Personally, I like the design of the first gen better. This particular car is lowered a little bit with lowering links. The car has air suspension, so it can raise up about 1.5 inches from where it sits currently, which has come in really handy when I was driving through city streets that may not be perfect. So this car really does a lot of different things well, in terms of being sporty and also being practical. 0 to 60 time in this car is 4 seconds, quarter mile, 12.7 at 108. So it's a pretty quick car, not the fastest by today's standards, but with the sporty engine, this car is plenty fun. The price starts at $110,875 when it was new. This car with options priced out to around $135,000. Without further ado, let's start this car up. All right, so let's go on inside. All right, in the car now, let's go for a drive. This car has a really nice suspension feel. Not too stiff, not jarring, but firm. Steering is responsive. Throttle is great. You gotta love the sound. It's got a nice V8 roar. So other cars I've owned include the F80 M3, both the base and the competition, the Giulia Quattrofolio, 997 Carrera S, 991 Carrera S. So I feel like I have a pretty good perspective as someone who's owned those cars and have lived with them to compare this against them. So how I got this vehicle is I had a Giulia Quattrofolio and was looking for more space because the trunk was just too small. And looking for something just a sporty. So naturally I looked at the Stelvio Quattrofolio, and Stelvio felt fine, but while I was there was a Panamera GTS at the dealership, and I decided to jump in one. At the time I also had a 997 Carrera S, and I had vehicles with PDK. So one thing I didn't like about the Alfa Romeo was the slow shift speeds. I know it's fast for an automatic, but still compared to PDK, it's not quite as fast. So I got in the Panamera, fired it up, went for a drive, and just fell in love. Shifts were just so much faster. The engine note, of course, being a naturally aspirated V8, was better, and I thought it was just more fun, even though it had a more kind of traditional sedan look to it. It wasn't quite as sporty as the Quattrofolio, but I bought it and I've been using this car since. And this car is now going on to past 2 years of ownership, and that's the longest I've owned a car in the past 10 years. So that speaks to this car. And most recently, I tried to get back into an F80 M3 because I had very fond memories of it. Drove one with the M Performance exhaust, and surprisingly, didn't think it was any more fun than this car. And I just recalled after driving that car just how the downshifts aren't as nice as the downshifts on this car. So yeah, so I decided to stay with this car. Am I going to keep it forever? Probably not, because I like changing cars. All right, so with that being said, let me just highlight some of the pros that I had mentioned earlier. And yes, I'm going to go off my notes. So pros include the sound of the engine, the naturally aspirated V8. It has a very responsive and sporty feel to it. Not as fast as an M5 with the turbochargers, but I think this gives just a good driving experience. You're not going to win drag races or highway polls against them, but I have won highway polls against Mustangs and Camaros. So for whatever it's worth, you have a family sedan that could keep up with those V8s. Other pros: the hatchback for practicality, the air suspension, which allows for a low ride height or for normal use, and if you want to raise it up for bad roads, you have that option, and also for more comfort. It's sporty for such a big sedan. Actually, reminds me a lot of my 991 Carrera S. The interior does look similar, but it's not just that. The feel of the car also reminds me of it. The high quality of the interior. This has a leather dashboard, Alcantara ceiling, headliner, and yeah, everything is just very solid in this car. A friend had commented how this car feels like it is carved out of one piece, and having other cars right now, I do have to agree that this is just a solid feeling car. And the body of the car is solid. It just feels like a very well-made car. This particular 4.8 liter V8 is in a lot of other Porsches, so from that perspective, it is not uncommon, which means that it shouldn't be difficult to fix. There's a lot of data out there on what goes wrong, and personally, with this car, this engine has been trouble-free for my two years of ownership and over 22,000 miles that I put on this car, which is really a testament to the quality of this car and the provenness of the engine. And the last pro, which could be a con, is I think this car is over-engineered. I had looked into the wheel well when I had the wheel off and just saw all the lines for the air suspension and other components running through there. It's a complicated car. When I did my spark plug change, I just was amazed at how complex this car is. So that could be a con, because it could mean if something ever does break, it's probably not going to be cheap or easy. So what are some cons? I think I spoke very highly of this car. One is the infotainment system, which is really slow compared to modern cars. One of my other cars is a 2021 Toyota Supra, and that is lightning fast compared to this. One annoying thing about the infotainment is that if you turn the car off while you have Bluetooth streaming on, Bluetooth streaming doesn't turn back on. It just defaults to radio. And if you're not close to where you had your last station, you're just going to hear static for a little bit, for about 30 seconds until you do something about it, like connecting back to Bluetooth. Another con is the Porsche tax on parts and services. So that is because, one, people are willing to pay for it, but two, because the car is complex, the oil change is time consuming. It took me almost 2 hours to do an oil change, because it requires removing a combination of 26 screws and bolts to get the underbelly off. But that's what you get for a performance car. The underbelly trays are there for aerodynamics. That's on the 911s as well, just to help with aerodynamics and smooth airflow. So, you get what you pay for, and it does cost more when comes time to fix. Another con is the controversial body style. So, not for everyone, but it is for me. Last con I would say is not, Ray addressed this a little bit, is that it's not as fast as the competition. Now, whether you need it to be, that's, I guess that could be a decision for you whether to go for the turbo. Personally, I'm looking at EVs now. So, looking at a Tesla Model S or Model S Plaid, I mean, no car is really going to touch that. So if you're looking for a sporty sedan, If you're looking for a fast sedan, maybe go EV. But if you're looking for feel and sound, this is hard to beat. So what's the verdict? I think this is a unique and practical sports sedan with Porsche DNA. What you get flowed down from their race cars and their two doors. So in a way, I think you're getting the best of both worlds in terms of sportiness and practicality. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments section. Please like this video, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I plan to do more content on this car and also on my Supra. I also have a 2012 Mini Cooper John Cooper Works in the garage, and a Lexus RX 450 hybrid that I plan to cover. So with that being said, thank you YouTube for checking in. Thank you for watching The Life of Joe. So until next time, take care.